So in this video, I'm going to go through more examples related to reference angles. So we're going to find all six trig functions for these two angles, and then we're going to evaluate these expressions using all reference angles. So I broke down the general idea for these problems in my lesson video, and then I promised in my lesson video to go through a few more examples. So if you're looking for more instruction and you don't want me to just run through it, then I recommend checking out my lesson video. So let's start by finding all six trig functions. So the first thing that I need to do with this type of problem is to figure out the reference angle. So what I want to do first is I want to go ahead and just draw a reference, of course. So I start with my initial side here, and then 315, I don't know, it's going to be somewhere over here. So just you know, a little sketch. So here is the angle in question, and so then what we talked about in the lesson video is when your reference angle ends up in this quadrant, what you want to do is you want to calculate 360 degrees minus 315 degrees, and so this is going to give me a reference angle of 45 degrees. Okay, so like we're basically like good now, except we have to think about the signs of our trig functions in this quadrant. So I brought up in the other video, all students take calculus, so this is the last quadrant. So cosine, so just cosine of theta, and let's see, secant of theta. These are the ones that are positive. The rest are going to be negative here. So now it's just really a matter of getting all my trig functions. So let's see, let's start with sine of 315 degrees, and we'll do the reciprocal as well. So 315 degrees. Okay, so I have a little chart that I just reference just for those of you that are still kind of learning some of these measurements. So we want to find 45 degrees right here. So I've got 45 degrees. Maybe I'll just mark this. So this is really the whole column that I'm interested in. So sine and cosecant are going to be reciprocals of one another, and they're going to have the same sign. So these both need to be negative, because remember, we said that the only ones that are going to be positive in this case, this is going to be positive, and then secant is also going to be positive. Really, the rest of these are going to be negative. So I'll just go ahead and mark all that now. So really, we've got like all the information that we need now to finish this. So for sine of 315, it's going to be negative square root of 2 over 2, and then negative square root of 2. And then for cosine of 315, so that's going to be positive square root of 2 over 2. And then secant of 315, that's just going to be positive square root of 2. And then tangent of 315 degrees, this is negative 1. And cotangent of 315 degrees, this is also negative 1. And so there you go. So there's all of our six trig values. Okay, so moving on to negative 855 degrees. So first things first, we want to figure out just what is this coterminal with. So if I take negative 855 degrees, and let's see, how about 2 times 360? That's going to come out to negative 135 degrees. Okay, cool. And so, actually, that's not enough. So we've got to do this again. My bad. When I do these examples, a lot of times I do them right here in front of you so you can see my whole thought process. Okay, so finally, this comes out to 255 degrees. Okay, so there we go. So now, what quadrant does that end up in? So it's going to end up, here's my initial side, and we're going to end up somewhere over here. Okay, so in this quadrant, let's figure out what's the reference angle. So my reference angle, so I'm going to here. So my theta prime in this case is going to be 255 degrees minus 180, which comes out to 45 degrees again. But now we are in quadrant 3, right? So in quadrant 3, so remember, all students take calculus, it's going to be tangent and cotangent of theta that are going to be the positive ones. The rest are going to be negative. Okay, So if I go back to this little chart, so we're still talking about 45 degrees, but now we are in quadrant 3, right? So that means that tangent and cotangent are positive. The rest of these, so you can see here, the rest of these need to be negative. So we just want to make that adjustment. But now we have all the values here. So we can go ahead and write this all out. So I'm going to have that, let's see, sine of negative 855 degrees. So this is going to be negative square root of 2 over 2, and then so will cosecant. And so let's see, it's just negative square root of 2. Cosine of negative 855 degrees. This is also going to be negative square root of 2 over 2. And then secant of negative 855 degrees. This will also be negative square root of 2. But tangent needs to be positive. So this becomes 1. And cotangent will also be positive 1. And so there you have it. Also, probably just one thing you want to do, since we have a negative here, just so that you don't get confused, I would recommend putting parentheses around these just to make that nice and clear. Okay, so moving on to the next example type. So one thing I want to remind you of, so whenever you see something being squared, so I bring this up over and over, but it's very important. So really what we're trying to do is, like for any one of these, we want to find cotangent of 120 degrees first and then square that. So we'll kind of come back to this at a later time. Okay, so what I need to do here, I have to find a couple of reference angles. So this one here, I don't need to worry about. That one we can just run with. But for cotangent of 120 degrees, so where does that fall? So for cotangent of 120, that falls into quadrant 2. So if I figure this out, so my reference angle, I'm going to take 180 degrees minus 120 degrees. So that'll give me 60 degrees. So there's my theta prime. Now we are in quadrant 2. So what does that say about the signs of my trig functions? So only sine and cosecant, these are the positive ones. So I just want to remember that when I'm evaluating. And then for cosine squared of 330 degrees, so where is that one going to land us? So here's my initial side, and that's going to end somewhere over this way, right? So we go that direction. Okay, so in this case, my reference angle, I'll take 360 minus 330 degrees. So I get 30 degrees. That is my theta prime in this case. Okay, so let's find each one of these. So let's start with cotangent of 120 degrees. So what we really want to find is cotangent of 60 degrees, but since it is in quadrant 2, we know that this needs to be, so I'll just go ahead and put one down. It has to be negative, right? Okay. So back to this, just trying to constantly remind you of this. So cotangent of 60 degrees, square root of 3 over 3. We also need tangent of 60 degrees, which is just, square root of 3, except we'll have to adjust, right? And then for 30 degrees, so let's see, we need what cosine of 30 degrees? That's actually square root of 3 over 2. So pause this video if you need to write any of those values down. Okay, so like we said, cotangent of 120 degrees. So that is going to end up being something negative, and so this comes out to then the square root of 3 over 3. Tangent of 60 degrees, so this is going to be the square root of 3. And this is positive because we're in the first quadrant. And then cosine of 330 degrees, so since I'm in the fourth quadrant, so remember all students take calculus, so in the fourth quadrant, cosine is positive. So I'll just note that right there. So for cosine of 30 degrees, this is square root of 3 over 2. Okay. So now we're like almost there, right? So now I've got to evaluate all of this fun times. So I'll just plug these values in really. So I've got negative square root of 3 over 3 squared plus square root of 3 squared minus square root of 3 over 2 squared. So then that's going to equal 3 over 9 plus 3 over 4. Or sorry, minus 3 over 4 minus 3 over 4. And so that's going to come out to 31 over 12. Okay, and so for B here, so once again, we've got a whole bunch of things to figure out here. So cotangent squared of 135 degrees. So let's figure out just my reference angle here. So here's my initial side. You can tell I'm getting tired. I shoot math videos for sometimes a long time, and then it gets harder and harder to draw. Okay, so 135 is somewhere over here. So there's my little reference angle. So I've got 180 minus 135. So this is going to be 45 degrees for my theta. And then I just want to note in this quadrant, so which functions are going to be positive. So only sine and cosecant of theta, those are going to be the positive ones. Okay, so 45 degrees I don't need to figure out, right? So what about sine squared of 150? So for 150 degrees, also somewhere over here, right? So this is going to be 180 degrees minus 150 degrees, so this is 30 degrees. So that's my theta, and so in this case I know that sine of theta and cosecant of theta are positive, so I don't need to note that again, but I've got my reference angle now. And so just to point this out one more time, so there's the chart if you need it. So like I said, I highly recommend you start making some note cards. You've got to know these like the back of your hand in a trig class. All right, so now we can go ahead and finish it. So let's see, I need these 3 angle measures. Okay, so cotangent using 45 degrees, so this will end up being -1, right, because I am in quadrant 2, so it's 1 normally, except I've got to make it negative because I'm in quadrant 2. Tangent of 45 degrees, so tangent of 45 degrees, since I'm in quadrant 1, that'll just be plain old 1. And then for sine of 150, so I am in the second quadrant, so this will be positive, and then this will be equal to 1/2. Okay, so now I can just plug everything in. Okay, so I've got, let's see, and this is going to become -1 squared minus 1 to the 4th minus 1/2 squared. And so then I can see just by looking at this, so my 1's are going to drop out. So I'm just left with -1/4, and so that'll be my answer. And so that covers it. So those definitely take a little while, but hopefully, like if you learn that chart, it's going to get a lot faster for you. Highly recommend that. If you found this helpful, consider helping me out, leaving a like, hitting the share button, subscribe, whatever. And otherwise, I will talk to you guys next time.